No one ever calls me.
Who calls anyone? Lord Sugar's about the only person who calls me.
What does he call you?
Yes, many things as well.
The world's complexity has just continued to increase exponentially, essentially. There's so much going on now. We're interacting with so much every day, and yet our brains have not.
This week, we're going to cover Jono's sketch that explains something called Dunbars number. The typical number of people we can keep track of and consider part of our ongoing social network. And according to anthropologist Robin Dunbar, this number sits at 150.
And she was like, for a social person, you are really antisocial.
Hello and welcome to Sketchplanations, the podcast. After a short end of summer break, we're back for another series. The doors are open once more. If you're a regular, come on in. How have you been? Here, have another stamp on your loyalty card. Yeah, the weather has turned a little lately, hasn't it? Well, look, you know where everything is. I'll let you get on. And if you're new here, then, well, welcome, firstly. Feel free to have a little look around. The older items are towards the back, and I'll be right here if you need anything, or if you have any questions. I should say, actually, that everything we have in stock is out on display, but we do get a new delivery every Thursday. It's not a big delivery, no, usually just one item, but it keeps us going. What's that, sorry? What kind of shop is this? Maybe think of it as a curious little emporium of miscellany. Niche? Yeah, I guess it is a little bit, yeah. Say again, how many customers? More than you might think, actually. Yeah, we were surprised too. How long what, sorry? How long can I keep this metaphor going? Well, that's probably enough now, isn't it, really? No need to flog a dead horse. Oh, only just to add that I'm Rob Bell, shopkeeper. Over there with his calculator and logbook is the manager and owner, John O'Hay. And along any minute now should be... Yeah, here he comes. It's our earnest, inquisitive intern. It's Tom Pellereau. Good evening, my friends. How are you?
Very good.
Hello.
You ever worked in a shop?
People genuinely wonder if they were missing like a track. It was so convincing. They're like, am I supposed to be hearing something? Very impressive. Have you done one of those? You ever done one of those fake conversations?
Well, this is. I think that's probably where I sort of got some of that from.
I always wonder if they're doing it on a film. Is there somebody at the other end saying the answers?
No, definitely not.
Do you know when I do that sometimes? Is when I see someone coming towards me in the street who I don't necessarily want to talk to. Out comes the phone. Fake conversation.
Oh, hello, mate.
You've blown that now, Rob.
Yeah. He's never talking to anyone.
No one ever calls me.
No. Who calls anyone? Ever. Lord Sugar's about the only person who calls me. If I don't answer, I call back immediately and immediately again.
What does he call you?
Yes, many things as well.
From that intro, though, it's something I genuinely don't know about either of you. Have either of you ever worked in a shop?
Worked in a cafe?
Have you? Count? Yeah. I'd say that counts. Kind of retail space, high street retail space. When was that? How old were you?
Gosh, it was a long time ago. I don't know, 17, 18 maybe. Probably 17 or 16 or something, yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
It was all right, actually, yeah. Actually, I think I learned a little bit from a summer of... We had sandwiches and coffee, so I'd press buttons on the coffee machine, but I didn't drink any coffee, so I had no idea if it was any good. And
was this before the coffee revolution? So there's only white coffee or black coffee?
I mean, there were more buttons, but most people, didn't get used very much. But we made sandwiches. I remember I used to get to keep all the sandwiches that we didn't eat that day. So I thought it was a great choice. Because if you finish at 9:30 at night and then eat 4 sandwiches just because they're free. Yeah, probably not the smartest.
Tommy, you ever work?
I worked in pubs. Did a lot of working in pubs, even at the uni bar. I worked there. That was always great fun. I really enjoyed working in a pub, working in a bar.
Did you?
Chat to people, taking their orders. Yeah, in the final year, actually, weirdly. Used to really enjoy that. And it's just nice serving people, saying hello to people, and also having something to do.
Yeah,
I quite enjoyed that part too.
I haven't.
Well.
Yeah,
You
there's
know,
that.
you
never
worked
worked in a
in
shop.
come on, Buffalo Grills.
The Buffalo Grill. Yeah, that's a restaurant. It's less a kind of yeah, I guess so. I mean, that was. Yeah, I had to dress up like a cowboy basically every night. Awful.
Look good.
Awful.
Talk
But
rubbish.
I think I'd quite enjoy working in a shop or a cafe environment, like you say, the kind of the social side of it, chatting with everybody. I'd want to make sure the counter and everything was very neatly and exactingly presented. I'd enjoy that. I think.
But you'd be on the phone the whole time. So sorry. Hi.
Where do you stand on chatting with people at the checkout in the supermarket?
I enjoy it. Yeah.
A little conversation.
Yeah, a little conversation. I don't want to hold up proceedings for anyone behind. I'm very conscious of that.
I bet you do.
But no, I'm very aware of that. But I like to, acknowledge there's a person there and let's have a chat.
Yeah, brighten their day.
I find when you come back from America, if you've been over in America for whatever reason and you come back to the UK, I'm always really chatty to people, behind the till or behind the counter or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time you just get looked at a bit weird.
They're not interested.
What's wrong with this
When
guy?
I came back from the States, I remember getting buses in London, and I would always say hi to the bus driver as I got on.
Yeah.
And say thank you as I got off. And then after a little while, I just realised they don't want to hear me at all. They'd much rather I just went beep and then walked off to the back. You're like, why is he saying hello to me?
Jono, is
The
it
rest
you
of
telling
London
me
is
that? Jono, is it you saying your dad has this sort of mini mission that he always tries to make someone smile whenever he has like in Sainsbury's? Does he still do that?
That's a very good memory. Yeah. No, he will still do that if he's
That's
at the checkout
nice.
at the supermarket. His little thing is see if you can make the checkout person smile.
I like that.
Maybe cheer up the day.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's a bit embarrassing to be next to him sometimes. when
Yeah,
he's doing
imagine being his son. It's probably a bit embarrassing.
I mean,
I just quietly pack up the shopping, pretend I'm on a phone call.
It's not my dad.
and walk off, just leave him. I don't know who this guy is.
Some old guy. Hi, Dad. Welcome to season 2.
Yeah. Hi, Tony. I mean, I totally appreciate there's more to it than just the the niceties. But a mutual friend of ours, Philly, sent me a photo on WhatsApp the other day of a place that he was visiting, a retail space in this little town in Colorado, up in the mountains, where he's spent a bit of time with his family over the summer, and it was a place called the Double Shot Cyclery. So it's a bike shop come coffee shop by day, but it's a kind of speakeasy bar by night. I thought, that sounds like exactly the kind of place I'd love to own and run. But again, I appreciate there's a lot more to running a business than just having a chat with people you come in and keeping your till nice and tidy.
I mean, in a way, it's sort of a shame that I was thinking that a lot of commercial properties are just sort of a bit wasted. I remember thinking of the school, like it's really busy till like 4 o'clock and then empty, this massive building. And if you could have more multiple use properties like that, make a lot more use of all this real estate.
It's a great shout. Great shout.
Maybe it's a bit tricky, run a restaurant in a school. Not quite optimised.
Who ordered the mash?
School restaurant, school dinner restaurant.
I mean, Tommy, you run a brand now. Have you? I know, and I appreciate that the classic high street in the UK is very much shifting at the moment. But would you ever have aspirations of having your like flagship brand store?
That would be amazing, and some of the mega brands that I would dream of being, the Dysons, the Apples, and many in between have a flagship store somewhere. And I remember speaking to a brand who I knew did have one who were pretty small, and the amount of money they were losing from having this store was like
they're mostly losses. They are
hundreds,
aren't they? Yeah.
hundreds of thousands, like a month they were losing from having this store. I was like, oh yeah, okay, we've got to be ginormously big to be able to even consider that. But maybe one day.
I can picture it. I can picture you swanning around in there, saying hi. Yeah, that's me. Yeah,
Standing next to the cardboard cutout.
yes, Jono. Yes.
I do think that probably everyone should work in retail of some form when they're relatively young, just to appreciate it, and probably everyone should also work in a call center just to appreciate the challenge of doing it. It's like we used to do national service. It's almost we should go and do certain things just to improve our kind of understanding,
appreciation,
and that sort of stuff. So, and certainly when we look to employ people, we do very much look at what other work they've done. Have they worked in bars, restaurants, shops? Because it's hard work, and it's an important graft that you have to do, especially when you're young, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Anyway, this podcast isn't about. Oh, sorry, Johnny, go on.
Well, I was going to say maybe we could all get a go on being bin men for the day or something.
Yeah,
pretty cool. Collect the recycling and.
You'd be knackered, wouldn't you? You'd be absolutely knackered after a shift. Yeah.
Rob, I think you should. Do you want to go and get a job in a cafe between now and next week? Come on.
Well, I think who was it did this? Is it Rod Gilbert? Rod Gilbert's work experience.
It's a great series.
I'll tell you about that, didn't he? Yeah, I'd love to do something like that. It sounds great.
You'd be really good at it. You could turn your hand towards anything.
I think he went and worked in hairdressers, didn't he, for a while?
Yeah,
probably
you could do the hair washing.
That's why I got my cap on.
I think you'd be good at the hair washing bit.
Yeah, chatting away.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, just jabbering away. Well, look, this is the start of a new series. We won't dwell on that too much, but I'm excited about where this series might take us. The things we might talk about. We haven't completely finalised which sketches we're going to talk about yet, but
we've got a few.
Yeah. It's good, with a new series. There's a new opportunity to switch things up, bring in some new signings, give the squad a bit of a boost. I mean, we're going to keep everything pretty much exactly the same, but
I was like, hang on,
out the other two people.
At least we're recognising there's an opportunity to do that. And the fresh start effect comes to mind. Episode 5 from last series. Anything we can take from that, maybe? Well, I'm excited.
No mumbling. That's what I'm going to take.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do you think you mumble a bit?
Apologies if I mumbled. Sorry. Shan't mumble anymore. It's my fresh start.
All right. If you hear Jono mumbling in series 2, you know where to go. Well, listen to anybody
at hello. Was it Dad? I fumbled it.
Well, hold that thought.
Yeah.
That was the rehearsal. Oh, we are rusty. It's only been like 2 weeks.
Is it hello@sketchplanations.com?
Well,
it
is, but
excellent.
Just keep your powder dry for a second.
Yeah.
For anyone coming to us for the first time, just to set out the lay of the land, in this podcast, we'll be bringing you a series of, let's call them medium depth conversations about a whole host of different topics, guided by the wonderful collection of sketches that explain stuff from the world around us, created by our very own John O'Hay. And they can all be found at sketchplanations.com. And one thing we all really enjoyed from the first series was hearing from you, our listeners, with your comments and stories and examples of the things we've talked about. And we want to encourage even more of that going forward. And the best way to get in touch with us is via email. Tommy, over to you.
At hello. I've messed that up because I said the at the beginning.
Tommy, how can people get in touch with us? Where would they send their emails?
hello@sketchplanations.com.
He hasn't even got that written down. That's all from memory, that.
I'm not going to try and spell it out, though. I know I'd make a mess of it.
We'll be going through the postbag of your messages, emails and comments at the very end of the episode. Well, I've just done a quick check and I'm happy to report that our business rates have been paid for the month. Nobody has any time off booked in, and our listen to one episode, get 15 free special offer has been a roaring success. The conditions are perfect. Let's seize the day. Let's podcast.
I like Let's Podcast. Does anybody else do that? It's good.
I don't know.
Jack still loves your podcast mobile one. Into the podcast.
To the Podmobile.
Yeah,
Podcave?
yeah, that's what it was. And we all come back with capes. All right. This week, we're going to cover Jono's sketch that explains something called Dunbars number. The typical number of people we can keep track of and consider part of our ongoing social network. And according to anthropologist Robin Dunbar, this number sits at 150. Righty-ho, Jono, it's time to shine, may I say, your particularly bright light once again. Talk us through Dunbar's number. Where did you dig up this little gem?
Yeah, good question. I was wondering that myself because I've known about it for a very long time, and I remembered that where I first came upon it was Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, which I read. It came out in 2000, but I must have read it like 2002, 2003, or something like that. And he gave this example of the company that makes Gore-Tex, like Gore and Associates.
DuPont, yeah. I'm talking bollocks. I'm going to shut up. It's not DuPont. You just cut me out of that. I was trying to work out where I'd remembered it from, and it's that book, isn't it?
Yes. It is, yeah. So, W.L. Gore and Associates. And so they apparently discovered that they would build company buildings that fit 150 people. And beyond 150 people, they discovered that various social problems would happen. And so rather than make a bigger building than 150, they would, once that was full, they'd just make another building to fit 150. And so obviously that was where I was introduced to it. But reading a bit more about it, I think about it as the typical number of people we can keep track of and consider part of our ongoing social network. And there's actually different scales of them. And what I tried to show in the sketch, I think I actually drew 150
Did you?
heads.
I didn't stop and count them, but it's a lovely sketch. I love how you've done it.
As I was trying to do this, and I was making fun of it a bit, like in the sense that if you got one person beyond 150, you've no idea who they are.
Yeah,
was the idea. But there's actually different degrees, and they so you have like a smaller number of very close friends, around 5, something called your super family. They're different names, or your clan. I think around 15. Sorry, the clan is 50, and then a tribe is 150, and so you have these different sort of groups. But about 150 was about the number of people that we can just generally keep track of. Was the idea.
So yeah, that's interesting because it's Robin Dunbar who I think might have first proposed this officially through some research, and I think research with others, but I think it has been interpreted and poked about quite a bit by other social scientists and anthropologists. So those numbers come up again and again, but the terminology that I'd seen was 5 loved ones, 15 good friends, 50 friends, and 150 meaningful contacts. So yeah, I guess that would fit in with the nomenclature you were using, Jono. I like the tribe at the end. That's quite cool.
Yeah, I think there's a few different ones, and I think Robin Dunbar was an evolutionary psychologist, and I think it came from he was studying all sorts of different groups through history, but also from, for example, primate communities and early humans, so like Neolithic farming communities, and so this number 150 comes up quite a lot, including in like the basic size of a unit of the Roman army. And also, to this day, it's kind of interesting to think. And I think he actually sort of calculated this. It's come to be 150, but based on the size of, I think it was the neocortex. So different primate groups would have different size brains and then actually live in different size social groups, which I think is really interesting.
It is. It's really, really interesting. So then I've also seen that, and I don't know if this was part of Dunbar's research or others who've added to it, but it kind of goes on from 150 to 500, what I've seen referred to as acquaintances, and then 1,500 people you'd recognise.
Gosh,
roughly for humans is what's been proposed.
I wonder how you test that. It's just quite fascinating, isn't it?
It is. And what's really interesting, what has been picked up on, that these are factors of 5. And kind of multiples of 3, I think, which you picked up on, Johnny, the multiples of 3 in there between the 5, the 15, the 50, give or take, and the 150. I don't know what. I don't think any scientific significance has been associated with that, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder what the deviation is on that, though, as it were, because I feel like some people know a lot more people and like having lots of friends, and other people like having more closer friends.
Yes.
So I imagine there's quite a deviation. Maybe that's the norm. That's the medium, as it were.
Well, this is the beautiful thing, right? So, as I've understood it, this research was done predominantly, and no, maybe I should say, as I understand it, this research was done initially on non-human primates, as Jono was saying, associating the size of the neocortex, so the size of the part of the brain that deals with thought and language, to the size of their communities that they managed, and it was done quite a bit through observing behaviours like grooming as a significant other being in that society. But then when it's been projected onto human life, we get the kind of things that John was talking about there historically, with Roman armies and like 11th century English villages, all this kind of thing. Kind of it made sense. But there's obviously these are projections. This is just a fun theory more than anything else, I guess, but it could be used effectively in things like business and society, I guess.
I like the way Dunbar mentioned about informally the number of people you wouldn't feel embarrassed about joining uninvited for a drink if you happen to bump into them in a bar.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's good.
So you know them well enough to do that you're
150. Like, whereas if it was one of your 500 acquaintances, you might go, oh,
you'd probably get on the phone, wouldn't you? I think
sorry.
I think it's the phone's ringing.
Do you know another interesting one that I've seen it kind of related to that 150 is the size of your Christmas card list. When we used to write Christmas cards, like my mum still writes Christmas cards, and I reckon her Christmas card list is probably around that. I should probably ask her.
That's a good point. Yeah, my parents, they work for weeks on their Christmas cards.
Yeah.
It's just major operation. But yeah, maybe it's around 150. I don't know.
But Tommy, you pick up on a really good point there, that there are outliers, and there will be huge variance within this, and it will vary with different cultures as well as individuals as well.
That's a really good point, in cultures and that. And I wonder how social media and the ability to communicate has massively affected this.
Yeah, hugely. And so it's very different. So, I mean, if you look at the difference between introverts and extroverts, I mean, it's probably not too far elite to say that most extroverts probably have a larger number of maybe slightly shallower relationships with people, and introverts probably have a smaller number of deeper relationships.
Yes.
I think the research also showed that women tend to have slightly more contacts within the closer layers than men.
Yeah.
But again, it depends where you're looking, I guess. So I've seen, and there's so many lovely bits of research that I've seen and read up around this. So culturally, apparently, there was this. I don't know who did this, so excuse me for my lack of knowledge here. But some research was done looking at how this came into play in Jamaica, and as a kind of, I guess, as a different culture to a very, say, Western or European culture, perhaps. So it's found that many low-income Jamaicans had extensive mobile phone contact lists that they invested quite a bit of time and effort in maintaining relationships with everybody on there. So, bigger than the 150 as a cultural difference to, say, maybe here in the UK or in the US, I don't know. I also read around the fact, if you're looking at outliers as well, in the US, some other research was done to say that really they thought the number was more towards 290. But then that was critiqued, saying that, but I think there's some big outliers in that, where you've got quite wealthy people that you're looking at who have tons of contacts, but actually they pay people to maintain those contacts on their behalf.
What? How do you do that?
Do you see what I mean? Well, if you're
Having
like
parties, if you've got a secretary also
exactly,
who can.
if you're a very successful businessman, you've got all these contacts, right? But you couldn't possibly maintain all those contacts. So you employed people, part of your team, part of your, some of you say, like your assistants, your PAs or whatever might be there.
Or you might have a lot of staff that work for you. The thing I was trying to work out is the people who work for me or I work is this a personal or a business context, if you know what I mean?
Well, as Jono pointed out with who was it? What was the company who split themselves up into Gore-Tex, who make Gore-Tex?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've read that the Swedish tax authorities have done that as well, split themselves into offices, physical offices of 150. So what kind of problems are we looking at, or what kind of challenges are we looking at when it gets over and above 150? I guess communication's a key one.
Yeah, well, as I said it was about like within 150 you can have a relatively cohesive group and keep track of everybody, and I think you like obviously we've as a race we can function many times beyond that, but to do that you need to start bringing in like norms and maybe rules or laws. And so like if you're creating an online community, you start to have, well, this is how you behave on here, you can't do this, or you get banned if you go do these actions. But you don't necessarily need that at smaller group sizes, but we can obviously function much bigger than that. But beyond that, you need to start having some rules. But it's funny. I mean, it's funny to think. It's funny, isn't it, to think of like, do you have rules between your close friends or your larger family? Of course, you don't. Right? You don't need them, but maybe you do when your company gets to that size. Or I don't know, if you're organising 150 people to go to a festival.
I feel like when we lot get together with the close friends, there are plenty of rules. They've just been intrinsically created.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. They're mainly at certain times of day, though, aren't they? Those rules when they come into play.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think like technology has a huge amount to play in this, and it must be just changing it, because it was about brain size, right? Wasn't it? It was about like what can we cope with in our brain, and I feel like I worked with somebody and he had a really very sensible observation that like the world's complexity has just continued to increase exponentially. Yeah, essentially, there's so much going on now. We're interacting with so much every day, and yet our brains have not, and our brains are still at the size of the Neolithic farming communities or the Roman armies, right? But yet there's so much more going on, and so actually it's just really difficult for us to keep up with this massive complexity that we introducing in our world.
Yeah, agreed. It's a good point.
Somehow we do. Somehow, like, because there are people on social media who have 50 million followers, and somehow they manage to sort of communicate with them. Is that their tribe? Is that many? Like Taylor Swift, she'd probably regard her tribe as those 50 million followers.
I don't think it's very two-way there, is it?
Potentially agree with that. Yeah.
I feel like you're more broadcasting when you're at that level.
Yeah, but it is interesting because Tommy, you raised what's the effect of social media on this earlier, and if you've got followers, it's very different. It's a very different kind of conversation. It's a very different relationship that you have with them. I think like you might recognise if you spend a bit of time on social media, if you spend a bit of time on social media and have a large following, you might recognise the odd faces that maybe interact with you a lot at a deeper level. That isn't necessarily to say that one is interacting back with them at that same level. So where does that sit? I don't know. It's very different, isn't it now? Looking at this.
I remember when I learned about this round about the time that Facebook was coming out, and it does do some interesting things, because your network at any one time, if you go back to your network at school, your network at university, and your network at your job, naturally sort of change. The people who you are are maintaining relationships and spending time. But Facebook does this funny thing of like resurfacing these really old connections and potentially putting them right at the top above the people that you're seeing on a regular basis, week on week. And I don't know if that has potential to expand the number or not. I don't know. I mean, we have a limited amount of time that we can spend and actually interact with, but by, I don't know, things like Strava, right? Like you do a run and it goes up on Strava and somebody else sees it who's from quite a long way back in your history. Maybe that expands our number.
I guess it's then about how meaningful you interpret that interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, coming back to some research, it was found that younger generations...
to work on your citations, Robert.
I really do. I'm so sorry, anybody whose work I am badly quoting or paraphrasing. But research does show that younger generations associate more meaning to online relationships, and so, I guess some even purely online relationships to older generations, because and I guess you could read into that for a lot of younger generations, life without the internet and without social media has never existed for them. So while the number might increase and the potential for that number to increase, what depth, what level are those interactions and relationships at?
Around this time, I was also reading. I remember reading some really interesting research about the likelihood of collaboration within companies, or it wasn't just companies; it was also like academic institutions, like universities, and they did it by distance. So they were like, okay, what's the likelihood of collaborating if you're in the same office? The likelihood of collaborating if you're on the same floor? Likelihood if you're on a same building but different floor, and the likelihood if you're in a different building. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the striking thing was it just dropped off like boom, like the chances of you collaborating with the person in a different building to you, even if the building was right next door, was might as well have been in a different country.
Wow.
And I was thinking about that research again recently, because I was thinking it's probably changed, like with all of the tools that we have, and how common it is to be able to work remotely, and how well connected you are with people who are not in the same location, but you're seeing them and meeting them and chatting with them every day.
Yes.
And also the tools you have, like even down to like emojis and things like that, to make a bit more of a connection than a formal email back and forth, right? And now you can send voice memos and video notes and all that, and I just think that's massively changed. But I remember thinking that research at the time was really fascinating to me. It's like even if you're on the floor below, you might as well not be in the same institution.
Wow.
Like you're not going to collaborate. But that's probably changing, I think.
Yeah, and here I'll say it again, especially since the pandemic, which we should just probably say in every single podcast at some point. Because so much developed so quickly then, right, for companies in remote working. Yeah,
definitely. Do you remember? I was thinking about this. I didn't actually check the size, but I think weddings are sort of interesting. I mean, there's a lot of rules around weddings about who you invite and who you don't invite, and it gets quite difficult, doesn't it? It's when you're like, oh well, we've only got 50 chairs, so.
It's not the chairs come to it, John. There's a price tag on each of those chairs. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
There is. But I remember somebody in my lab at Berkeley was making some really cool software to visualize networks. I don't know if you remember, but I took everybody on the guest list and I thought it'd be interesting to know, well, actually at a wedding, it just looks like loads of people sat around loads of tables, but it'd be interesting to see at what parts of your life these people came from. And we did like this sort of cluster diagram and printed it out and put it on the wall, which is thinking back, is a very unusual thing to do at a wedding. But it was quite interesting. I had some school friends, university friends, family friends, and and family, and sometimes the family had connections with some of the friends and some didn't. But I do remember having two people who came who, when you drew out this network, everybody was like all these clusters, and then there were these two people off at the side, and I had to like tuck them in.
Just find a way.
Are they the
didn't feel
guys?
fair.
Are they the guys on the sketch? The guy over on the right hand side going,
Who invited him?
So that story brings up two interesting points. One is, I think you have your 5 and your 15 and your 50, and they're so like you have them when you're in your 10s and in your teenagers and in your 20s and in your 30s. So by the time you get to kind of your mid 40s, you kind of have these different groups over time. And they kind of resurface instantly. And then the second one is that when you get married, you're then with a partner who also has her group. Yeah. And there's only so much time in a year that you can see people. So you kind of have this scenario where those two groups have to kind of come together, and then you almost then rebuild from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Tom.
And Rob, you're probably going through this at the moment where you're like, well, I used to see Felds the whole time, or I think you're seeing him even more at the moment, aren't you? Because your partners get on really well. Whereas, and her, you're seeing her friends, and it's kind of that melting pot together. But unfortunately, some do kind of fall away gradually over time.
Yeah, but it's inevitable, isn't it? Because that's, I think where people sit within these groups is almost entirely determined by how frequently you get to see them. Yeah. Right. As you say, there's only a certain amount of time, and when to the point, I guess at our point in life, where there's an opportunity to have somebody new into these different groups, it's a conscious decision that we probably make, or maybe kind of semi-conscious decision, as to whether there's room in our bandwidth to do that.
Yeah. And I personally find I don't have that much room. I quite like having a small group. I got in trouble last night actually with Sarah on this sort of note. There's a festival that happens quite close to where we live, St Albans, and it's like all day in the evening. I was like, I really don't fancy going, Sarah. She's like, well, some friends of ours are going, we'll see these people. I was like, well, yeah, I'd rather choose who I see rather than go to something where I might happen upon a load of people that I probably don't really want to see. And she was like, for a social person, you are really antisocial. And I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of how I like it.
Don't forget, there's always the old phone trick, Tom.
Yeah, it's always the phone.
No, but I think it's very natural for people, as you said, Tommy, for different people at different stages in our lives to kind of migrate between those different groups, both ways, depending on factors, depending on situations. So I went through my
Did you go through your list
in my mobile phone? Yeah, and I counted them, and this is built up over when you get a new phone, it just kind of continues on.
The votes are in. How many did you get?
So there were 852.
Oh wow!
Right, there were a couple of dupes.
How many were called Tom? Like I've got hundreds that are just like Tom or
no. I tend to put a bit more in than that. Some of them didn't have surnames, but were a description of
amazing
of what that was. There were at least 100, probably 150 within there whose names I didn't even recognise anymore. So that would bring me down to like let's say like 600. So I reckon you would probably think then of the people in your contacts list on your phone is all your loved ones, your friends, your good friends, the people you want to maintain a friendship with, but it probably is your acquaintances, around the 500 mark. People you've done some business with, maybe.
A few plumbers.
Yeah, exactly.
A few agents.
How did you feel about, of those, let's say 500 people, would you have, if you came across them in a bar unexpectedly, would you join them for a drink? Would you feel comfortable?
No, because that's the acquaintances. I think that matches with what we were saying earlier. But if you were to look at the top 150 within there, I probably would. Yeah, and interestingly, and I know that I haven't updated this for about maybe 3 or 4 years, but you can favourite certain contacts, so they're always at the top. I counted those up. 15.
Were either Jono and I in
Check
that?
your phone.
Were we in that?
What have you got?
No,
sorry.
Oh, it's a personal question. Jono was, but Tom wasn't. That's painful.
Bit awkward. No, of course you were. Of course
I've got 15 exactly.
Have you as well?
Yeah.
Tommy, count up your...
I think it's because you're only allowed
favourites?
15
favourites, right? It's because there's a limit on the number of favourites you could have.
John, are you serious?
I'm serious. I got 15.
That's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not amazing. It's just interesting. It's fun. It's fun. Let's call it that. Tommy doesn't favourite anyone because he's the least social person. He's the most antisocial social person.
I don't use the favourites bit. I've got 5.
I always
much
like
bigger than that.
this idea for company stuff. I like this idea of, was it 2 pizza teams? Are you familiar with that, Tom?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
a 2 pizza team?
So it's basically if you want to get a team to work on something,
Yeah.
don't get the team size bigger than if you were going to have an evening social. It can be fed with 2 pizzas.
So 2
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Rob's like, I can do 1 pizza.
And if there are
1 and a
leftovers of
half.
someone else's, I am in there.
I like cold pizza.
I'm on my own.
I am for this
Again.
brainstorm. Yes.
I'll take 2
Feeling
pizza,
really
please.
full and pretty disgusted with myself. Again.
This is why Rob's freelance. Can't join any teams. Eat
So
all
what?
the pizza?
So a 2 pizza
Don't invite
team.
me
So
back.
I mean, if you're looking at that for people who aren't gluttonous, what are you looking at? Like, I guess 6, 7, 8 people.
Yeah, maybe a little bit less.
I guess.
I think there's like a size where a very small teams, you don't have to coordinate very much, and as you get the team bigger, you have to waste more time on coordinating the people in the team.
Yeah.
And so and there was a really nice concept I heard of not too long ago. Seth Godin introduced it, which is a handshake overhead, which is also a thing in technology, I think, which is just like literally every person you meet requires a little bit of time and a little bit of attention to say hello and meet them and remember who they are and all that stuff. And whereas if you've got small enough teams, your handshake overhead is really small.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Are you wary of this, Tommy? And it's I know with the size of your company, we're not at the 150 level, but are you wary of the size of the company and thus the additional functions that you might have to bring in to manage that population?
It makes a big difference, and often you start with less than 5 and you get to 5, and I know a lot of founders who kind of hark back to those days when there were 5 or 15 of them with kind of really fond memories because everyone knew each other really well. It was really easy to get stuff done. There wasn't that massive handshake because the more people you have, the more HR you need, the more events you need, the more communication, the more you spend your life communicating rather than doing stuff. So it is a big. I think about it a lot, and we've yo-yoed up and down, and the difference in structures that we have to have as a larger team is really quite significant. And personally, having grown up in small companies, that was quite challenging for me, I must admit.
What was challenging? To start to grow and think about not
having
being
the
a smaller
systems in place and actually even realizing that they were necessary. Firstly, that unconscious incompetence. We must do a sketch explanation of that one if we haven't done it. The conscious incompetence, the 4 different squares.
That must be a 2x2.
And a 2x2, because that one really changed my life. I remember hearing about that. It's like, that really makes sense.
It's not a very pretty sketch, but there is one. The conscious competence framework,
Yeah. Probably a
Matrix.
tricky sketch. Just a matrix.
Yeah, did a long time ago.
That's just that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it is good. I remember when I was made aware of that by a manager, and it was eye-opening. I remember that. Yeah. Great.
So if we're going to talk
on a
about it, we
journey.
should probably at least explain what it is.
Save it for another day. You got to listeners. You got to listen to another episode.
Yeah.
That one.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll tell you something I was going to round this off by asking if there's any other business to bring in on Dunbars number that you'd thought of wanting to bring to the table. And I'll start it off. In looking at this and looking at, as I was saying earlier, this number might be quite different between cultures and different societies, different parts of the world. I saw what is this? The acronym WEIRD, a weird society, WEIRD, which stood for Western Educated, Industrialized, Rich and Democratic. And it had been proposed that perhaps Dunbar's number applied mostly to weird societies. But I hadn't seen that acronym before.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that? Have you seen that?
Yeah. It's very much like that's everyone we know, right?
Yeah.
I'm currently reading a book about geopolitics, and it's talking me through the history of Saudi Arabia, the history of Pakistan, the history of like these places that we didn't learn any history of those places at school, right? So we had no kind of understanding, and they're very different culturally, religiously, their beliefs, and I think we often really underestimate how all of our thoughts and being is that democracy is great and is the only way forward, and that and the rich development and everyone wants to be like us, and that's not the case.
I think that's really interesting, Tommy, because stumbling upon this through reading up about Dunbar's number, I was thinking the exact same thing. Just how I don't think I want to call it arrogance, but just how conditioned I am and my brain is to just assume that most people are like me. But I guess I don't know. I guess that's probably the same for everybody. You live in your world.
Yeah.
We're going slightly off topic.
Travel's so valuable.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, absolutely.
If you can.
Anything more on Dunbar's number?
I think I'd like to say that this was based on some science on the size of a certain part of our brain, right?
Yeah.
So I think it is quite a kind of almost like certain aspects of physics and gravity. It's potentially actually constrained around something. And I think potentially that's okay. I think maybe the pressure is on that we should know lots of people, we should have really, but I've found it quite reassuring that, you have probably around 5 who you're really close with, 15 who you're very, 5 that you're incredibly close with, that you would ask for any kind of help night or day, and they would help. And you'd have 15 who you would probably really, really rely on and you'd call next, and then probably a larger group. And that's absolutely fine. You don't have to be kind of trying to be best buddy with hundreds of people, because probably your brain won't be able to handle it.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
Okay.
I think I quite enjoyed that factor as well. This is a kind of physiological limitation on this, and the complexity that our brains can handle.
So when you start a new class or a new job, there's going to be loads of those people, and it'll be really quite mentally taxing at the beginning until you kind of find your group within that potentially.
I think there's a few times in your life that are quite precious in a way, where you're really open to new connections.
Yeah.
Like if you go to university, or if you go live in a different country, and you're like, okay, right, I'm here to meet new people. You live in a new city or something, and then there are lots of times in your life where actually you're like, I don't really need to add any more connections. And probably as you get older, you're like, actually, I've already got plenty of connections. Maybe I don't need to add 2 more, so I'm not going to spend as much time in the mixes and the mingling and all that. But those times where you're open to meeting people are quite precious and rare in a way. Don't realise it at the time, probably.
But why are you open and looking to meet new people at those stages? It's possibly because at that time and place you don't have the contacts there. You've got all this extra capacity because there's change. You've got this capacity to spend more time developing and maintaining those relationships.
Yeah, it's funny. If I think of those times, like when I moved to the US and when I went to university in particular, and to some degree when I moved back to the UK, I was very conscious that you're just like, there's just a couple of people around here that so it's going to be a weird life if you just have those couple of people.
Yeah.
Like, let's go meet some people. Let's go build my circle.
But then it gets to a point and your brain goes, wait, that'll do, mate.
Yeah, my parents have lived in a number of different places, and maybe that's the problem with their Christmas card list.
You can drop, they've got 150 in 4 different places.
All these countries. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, every now and then,
use a spreadsheet to keep track.
You know, or we just need a bit of a purge every now and then, maybe. You know, a bit of a spring clean.
And an update. So one of the things when we moved to St Albans, Sarah and I, we didn't really know. We knew one of 2 other people here, and I was spending a lot of time like traveling to southwest London to see you guys, and traveling to see my family. And it was like, I'm either going to spend all my time traveling away from here, or I need to like really get to know the people I live near. So I think that weekend potentially, when I realised that, I was like, I should start a WhatsApp group for everyone on this street. And just anyone I see, let's like say, I thought we'd start a WhatsApp group just in case we've got some stuff. And then I got involved in trying to organise this street party. And then Sarah organised a girls equivalent. And so there's a girls WhatsApp, a boys WhatsApp, and like a street one. And it's really cool. It's really nice. Like we do a lot of stuff of just this bag in the background. Someone on the street was like, it's a rucksack. I'm not going to use it again. Does anyone want it? And it'd be perfect for Jack. I love that. And so it is occasionally worth really trying to invest in your local. I would recommend it can be worth investing in your neighbours, because you can then see people just as you walk out the door, which is really cool.
It is good. Well, I mean, it harks back to a little bit what we were talking about with 5 Ways to Wellbeing, wasn't it? About connecting with people. But also, again, reading around this, it was talked about in great big cities, hugely populated, millions, tens of millions of people.
Yeah,
it might be an idea to find your little village within the city, which London's pretty good at, I'd say. Just the way,
because that's its history.
Out.
It was villages which got engulfed.
Yeah, there you go. So find your village. There we go. Well, the end of our exploration of Dunbar's number signifies closing time for this episode. Please make your way to the till imminently to make your purchases. £25. Thank you very much. That's £3.87 change. There you go. Have a wonderful day. I don't know what I'm trying to do with that.
What were you trying to do?
I don't know.
Wonderful.
What I was going to do is
day.
Have a great day, and be sure to come back soon.
That's awful.
I'll do great.
Let Jono do it.
No, that was much better.
Next week, we'll be back talking about the 4 pillars of too much. Too much what, I hear you ask? Tune in to find out. For now, thanks very much for listening. Go well and stay well. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
See you later.
All music on this podcast series is sourced from the very talented Frank Cinelli. And you can find loads more tracks at frankcinelli.com.